she's doing Ph.D. in political science also. Also, she cleared NET as well as the SET exam, and also she passed Andhra Pradesh Public Service Commission exam for assistant professor in university. Also, she has a published research work also. She presented a paper on internal security of India, a feminist perspective. And the second paper is rights of school child in India. This is the international published her paper. Also, she published her paper on liberalism and revolution through the aims of Jyotirao Phule. She achieved a lot of things. So, she published a book titled Facet of Civil and Social Rights in 2021. Also, she participated national conference also, and also she attend the winter session of the Maharashtra legislature in December. Also, she have a experience of the faculty, and also she is in charge of the political science, sociology, and history research and academies. Also, she conducted leadership seminar also with the Subramaniam Iyer sir. She conducted a national webinar and panel discussion of freedom of speech and expression. Also, she organized international conference of the institution. So there are a lot of work she's doing, but I want to tell that she did some social work also. She involved in teaching some children with the NGOs Kotak Unnati led Airoli. Also, she worked with the Yo Bureau of the Mulund Pavaikas. And also she involved the translation and editing the study material for the teacher training workshop also. And and so on. So I'm not taking much time of the Manasi Ahire. So Manasi Ahire, please. Now she sorry. Today she will talk on the questioning of narratives of Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, a critical dissection of Gulamgiri. So we would like to invite Ms. Manasi Ahire. Please hand over the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nutan. Are you guys able to hear me? Am I audible? Can you please say something? A yes or no would be great.
Yes, you are.
Yes, yes.
All right, so I would like to just share my screen with you. Hold on. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. So first of all, a very, very pleasant evening to all of you, and a very enthralling and respectful Jai Bhim to everyone who has gathered here. I would like to begin this session by firstly showing my gratitude to being invited here. And also I would like to dedicate today's session to my very beloved professor, Dr. Hari Narke, who is not amongst us, but his ideas, his work are forever going to inspire us. Right, his ideas, his writings, his books, they have basically brought me closer to the real understanding of the true thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. So the whole identity of Mahatma Jyotirao Phule was shown to us in a different light by Dr. Hari Narke. So thankfully, we are approaching the topic that is the questioning of narratives by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. Now, before beginning this topic, let me be very clear that I am a political science student. So I might get a lot theoretical, I might get a lot into concepts because I love getting into political philosophies and debates of the time. But since I realized that not many of us are from the same background, so I'll take it really easy, okay? So that the common layman can understand everything that is going on. So yeah, and if there is anything that you guys are not able to understand, you can write it in the chat section or ask me later. Okay, and also because I am a professor, I know that I should not take much of your time, so I'll try to be as discreet and as brief as possible to convey my thoughts. right? Because that is what even Mahatma Jyotirao Phule does. He understands the needs of the situation, the demand of the situation, and then addresses them accordingly. That is what he has done in his magnum opus called Gulamgiri, right? So the topic for the day, that is questioning of narratives by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, is a very dynamic topic, because even today we are dealing with the same situation. But let's first focus on what are narratives. Okay, basically, why do we have to study them, or why do we have to know about narratives? Okay, so basically the whole idea of narratives is a very simple one. अगर मैं आपको सीधी सादी समझाऊं तो narratives is nothing but the representation of events और whatever is happening. अगर मैं उसको आपको बताना शुरू कर दूं कि अच्छा ये होता था, ये हुआ है, वो होना चाहिए, फिर ऐसा हुआ है, this is setting of a narrative, राइट? सो अगर मैं इसे हिंदी में बताना चाहूँ या मराठी में बताना चाहूँ तो इट्स अ सिंपल और सिंपलेस्ट फॉर्म ऑफ अ स्टोरी, राइट? जब हम कहानियों की बात करते हैं ना, दैट इज व्हाट वी मीन बाय नैरेटिव्स. बट देयर इज एन इनहेरेंट डिफरेंस. Okay, stories are different from narratives. Why? Because I'll give you a simple example. Okay, my mother woke up this morning. She prepared tiffin for us. She prepared food for my family members. She prepared for her work, and then she left for her office. Now that is a story, right? But if I say that working women in India, they have to multitask as housewives as well as office going employees, right? Now this essentially becomes a narrative. Okay? That means a narrative has a discourse, a rational discourse. The meaning is assigned to them, right? So to make sense of the story, you need to have your own assumptions, you need to have your own understanding of that reality. That is basically the idea of a narrative. To give another example, how do we look at narratives? Now, India has a caste system, as you guys can see on my screen, right? So now this is a blatant description of a fact कि इंडिया में caste system है, right? But ये narrative नहीं होता, right? Narrative तब होगा जब इस sentence के साथ कोई अलग discourse या कोई अलग understanding या कोई अलग perspective जोड़ा जाएगा. So the caste system has given rise to many Indias. So that becomes a crucial narrative. Okay, so these are the narratives that we live and we breathe on an everyday basis, right? हम movies में देख रहे हैं, हम गानों में सुन रहे हैं, we are reading books, we are reading journals, we are a part of a living narrative of the day, right? अगर आपने सुना होगा कि भारत हिंदू राष्ट्र बनने वाला है, या हमें ऐसे ही चलना चाहिए, हमें ऐसे ही रहना चाहिए, हमें यही खाना चाहिए, हमें यही जाना चाहिए. All these are basically narratives. I'm so sorry, there is another narrative which I'm living through right now. So excuse me, my cat was disturbing me. So again, this is another narrative that when you start working, you are going to have a lot of problems at home. So work from home is essentially going to fail. So that is another narrative in a digital India. So basically, narratives are powerful tools, powerful ideas that was recognized by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, right? So why are narratives important? है तो आखिर में कहानियां ही, right? So basically, narratives have essential functions, and these functions are as I'm given in the screen. Firstly, it establishes your identity. आपकी जो पहचान होती है ना, वो आपको narratives देते हैं, ठीक है? जैसे कि अगर मैं कहूँ कि शोले मूवी में गब्बर और ठाकुर दोनों में से एक हीरो है, एक विलन है, राइट? तो गब्बर तो विलन ही है हम सबके लिए, राइट? बट द होल आइडिया इज द नरेटिव दैट हैज बीन एस्टैब्लिश्ड कि गब्बर विल ऑलवेज रिमेन द विलन एंड ठाकुर विल ऑलवेज रिमेन द हीरो, राइट? सो अगर आप यही बात गब्बर से पूछे, है ना, सो गब्बर इज गोइंग टू टेल यू दैट आई एम द हीरो ऑफ माई स्टोरी, राइट? So the identity crisis is going to continue. Okay. Similarly, if you ask Thakur, Thakur is going to say that I am the hero of my story. Now, why is this important? This is basically important, and this is a very small example that I have given you. Okay. Look at it from a larger perspective. Okay. Today, you go through a lot of identities, like you may be a woman, you may be a man, you may be a transgender, you may be gay, you might be lesbian, you might be Buddhist, you might be Dalit, you might be Christian Dalit, you might be Hindu Dalit, and every identity brings with it its own advantages and disadvantages. So this is what happens through narratives. Secondly, you recognize your own agency. Now, what is agency basically? Now, this is a very much used and very much abused word in today's media and culture. Agency basically means that you need to have the freedom to take your own life's decisions. The way you want to move your discourse, the way you want to move your life, right? That is basically agency in a very short and simple way. राइट आपको हक है वो सारी बातें करने का, वो सारे सच चुनने का जो आपकी जिंदगी के लिए जरूरी है. दैट इज योर एजेंसी which narratives give you. Okay, and last but not the least and the most essential of all, they determine dominance and power. That means narratives या कहानियों से आपको पता चलता है कि आपके पास कितनी पावर है. अब अगर आप अशोकन टाइम्स में देखें, अशोक के टाइम में देयर वाज अ बुद्धिस्ट नैरेटिव, right? That is why you would see dhamma yatras being taken out. Okay, Ashoka would write Buddhist inscriptions. I think many of our colleagues have already covered that in detail. Similarly, after Ashokan Buddhist narrative, there was the Shunga Hinduism narrative, right? Where the Gupta narrative. Now, in that Hinduism, Gautam Buddha becomes a part of the Dashavatars of Vishnu, right? So, वो जो कहानी है ना, वो कहानी इस तरह से बदली कि आपके पूरी पावर और डोमिनेंस की जो डायनामिक है ना, वही बदल गई. ठीक है. तो जहां पे पहले बुद्धिज्म was at some level, at some power, now Hinduism started assuming that power, that identity. Getting it? And that is why people who would support Buddhism would start to decline. This is the idea that narratives basically give you. Okay, and this was definitely identified by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. And let me tell you all, Mahatma Jyotirao Phule was the pioneer when it came to identifying these ideas. उन्हें हमेशा ये सवाल पढ़ते थे कि यार ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है कि सदियों से आप एक तबके के लोग को इतने ज्यादा सब्जुगेटेड और इतने ज्यादा ऑप्रेस्ड रख रहे हो. ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है that since ages and since centuries you have one group of people who can claim all the power, all the privileges without a single question. Right? Now, to answer all these questions, Mahatma Phule started reading. Mahatma Phule started looking at evidences. And that is how he basically came up with the idea of narratives in his magnum opus, Gulamgiri. Okay, now let me tell you what was the methodology that he used. Now, every social reformer, every political philosopher, फिर वो डॉक्टर अंबेडकर हो, महात्मा फुले हो, आयोती थास हो, पेरियार हो, वो अपने अपने तरीके से ना कोई ऐसे मेथोडोलॉजी को फॉलो करेंगे जिससे वो जो बात कहना चाहते हैं ना वो आप तक पहुंचे. राइट? जैसे कि डॉक्टर बी आर अम्बेडकर ने मूक नायक लिखी थी, है ना? उन्होंने एक पॉलिटिकल पार्टी बनाई थी ताकि उनके आइडियाज आप सब तक, कॉमन पीपल तक पहुंचे. किताबें लिखी थी, है ना? बट महात्मा ज्योतिराव फुले ने सबसे पहले इस बात को आइडेंटिफाई किया था, स्पेशली इन महाराष्ट्र. He was the one to basically understand कि लोगों तक अगर आपको पहुंचना है तब सिर्फ किताब लिखकर काम नहीं होगा. किताबों में भी आपको अलग तरीके की मेथोडोलॉजी यूज करनी होगी, which is the didactic methodology. Didactic methodology basically means कि बातों बातों में बातों को समझाओ. राइट अगर आप प्लेटो को देखो, सोक्रेट्स को देखो, ये जो महान फिलोसोफर्स थे, नाउ दीज फिलोसोफर्स बेसिकली वुड यूज दिस मेथोडोलॉजी, राइट? दे वुड एक्सप्लेन crucial and complicated ideas like justice, equality, state, government, censorship, right? And that too in very simple conversations with their students. Okay. Similarly, Gulamgiri is a 16-part conversations between Jyotiba Phule and Dhundiba. Now, who are these two people? Basically, I'm going to tell you this. This is a very interesting thing. Okay. Now, Jyotiba Phule is the one who is going to bring an enlightenment. He is going to answer your questions. And Dhondiba as a figure is you and me. Right? So basically, हम और आप महात्मा ज्योतिराव फुले को सवाल पूछ रहे हैं और महात्मा फुले उनका जवाब दे रहे हैं. Right? And that is the idea in Gulamgiri. So Dhondiba is a very outspoken and a very crass and a very wild and a very judgmental kind of a guy, right? So उनको फर्क नहीं पड़ता, उनके मन में जो आ रहा है वो first thought वो बोल देंगे, right? But Mahatma Phule, on the other hand, is a rationalist, right? He's a well-read guy. He has born and brought up on the ideas of modernity that have been brought out by the British government. Right? So the ideas of rationality, liberty, equality, fraternity, all these ideas would be used by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule to come to conclusions with the conversations with Dhundiba. Right? This is a very interesting thing because this idea of two people conversation so that the person, the author can reach you, the author can point out to you. This was a very novel technique which was not at all used till that point of time. Okay, and in fact, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was also inspired by this easy and lucid way of explaining things, which basically inspired him to do further research in caste and understanding of social inequalities. Okay, so Mahatma Phule, basically in his ideas of slavery, in the magnum opus Gulamgiri, talks about these narratives. And he starts questioning those narratives. Okay, and that you will see in different parts of the book. For example, first and foremost, what he does is he questions the whole narrative of Manusmriti. ठीक है, सो मनुस्मृति में तो ये बताया गया है कि ब्रह्मदेव के सर से आपको ब्राह्मण पैदा होते हुए दिखाई देते हैं, वैसे ही उनके फीट से आपको शूद्र जन्म लेते हुए दिखेंगे. राइट? ये मनुस्मृति में लिखा गया है. राइट? ये भगवत पुराण में लिखा गया है. So basically, the Brahmanical Puranas, the Hinduist scriptures, they gave evidences for this sort of discrimination. So Mahatma Phule would basically question these narratives. He would say, okay, अगर ब्रह्मदेव के सर से ब्राह्मण निकलते हैं, पैरों से शूद्र निकलते हैं, तो ब्रह्मदेव की जो मम्मी है, his mother, ब्राह्मणी, right? वो कौन से पार्ट से निकलती है? Okay, that means the idea is ब्रह्मदेव की जो मम्मी है, अगर she is the one who is giving birth to Brahma, then in that case the entire logic of your caste system is failing, because the idea of a woman is not at all accommodated in the caste system then, isn't it? Similarly, अगर आप इसके आगे जाते हैं और थोड़ा गुलामगिरी के आइडियाज को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं, महात्मा फुले ने एक एथिकल और मॉरल कनोटेशन दिया है that you follow this idea of caste system of the Brahmadev. But Brahmadev actually has sexual relations with his own daughter, right? He marries his own daughter. Now, in these circumstances, do you think people are going to worship him? No, he is not being worshipped. अगर ऐसा बंदा है जिसे आप पूज नहीं रहे हो, जिसकी आप रिस्पेक्ट नहीं कर रहे हो, बट उसने बनाया हुआ कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन आप फॉलो क्यों कर रहे हैं? Right? On what grounds are you following this sort of social hierarchies? Right? Basically, now Mahatma Phule would charter us to the whole origin of Brahmanism. how did the religion of Brahmanism basically come into being? Okay, so in part second and in part third, he talks about the ancestry of Brahmanism. Brahmins, right? Brahmins आते कहाँ से है? तो उन्होंने कहा है कि ब्राह्मण्स ना इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट के ओरिजिनल इनहैबिटेंट्स नहीं है. Right? I repeat, Brahmins are not the original inhabitants of the Indian subcontinent. Okay, and he says that they have come to India in almost 9 batches. Okay, and that would happen in the Aryan way, in the Aryan Vedic age. Okay, so he gives the first batch as the name Matsyas. Now Matsyas as a word is found in your Puranas. Okay, so he says Matsyas were the first batch of people who had come to the Indian subcontinent in small boats which were shaped like fishes. Okay, and that is why they were called as Matsya. Matsya is fish, basically, right? So when they came to India, they defeated the original inhabitants of India. Okay, India में तब people were staying. Indian subcontinent के जो भी original inhabitants थे, उनको हरा दिया था मत्स्यास ने. उसके बाद दूसरी होड़ आई जिनको कहा गया था कच्छस, कच्छ, right? कच्छ मतलब कछुआ, turtle, basically. So the idea was, when these people came, they were very much huge in numbers, but they would walk very slowly like turtles, kachuas. That's why they were called as Kutch. After Kutch, there were other people who came, other people like the other group, under Varaha. Okay? Now Varaha was also one of the Brahmanical ancestors, right, who came here and who further destroyed the original inhabitants of Indian subcontinent. Okay. Further, Mahatma Phule brings to us a very beautiful narrative of why nursing was important. Now, nursing came after Varaha. एंड जब नर्सिंग आए ना यहाँ पर, तब इन्होंने यूज किया अपना शातिर दिमाग. जब नर्सिंग यहाँ पर आए थे तब इंडिया में, इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट में, अकॉर्डिंग टू महात्मा फुले, दिस इज द नैरेटिव, हिरण्यकश्यपु वाज द रूलर ओवर हियर. ही वाज द लोकल रूलर हियर. एंड यहाँ पे उनका जो राज्य था वो काफी फैला हुआ था, काफी स्ट्रॉन्ग राजा थे वो. तो उनको हराना ना काफी मुश्किल था for Narsimha. ठीक है? So what Narsimha does is he basically starts brainwashing Hiranyakashipu's son Prahlad. अगर आप लोग को याद होगा, अगर आप लोग होली के आइडिया को, why do we celebrate the festival of होली, तो होली में प्रहलाद, हिरण्यकशिपु, होलिका, ये वाली जो स्टोरी है ये आपने सुनी होगी. It's a very common narrative basically. But here what Mahatma Phule does is he destroys the whole narrative of the festival of Holi, right? So what he does is he says that Prahlad was brainwashed by this Aryan conqueror called Narsimha. Okay? And because Prahlad would worship Narsimha, it would really pain his own son, his own father, Hiranyakashipu, right? कौन सा बाप होगा जिसे अच्छा लगेगा कि उसका बेटा उसकी खिलाफत करे, है ना? It's a very simple thing to understand. So Narsimha, what he does basically is he goes to Prahlad, takes his health, then enters the chambers of Hiranyakashipu and वहां पे जाके उनके पेट को फाड़कर बहुत brutally उनको मार देते हैं, right? This is the narrative that Mahatma Phule says. Now Dhondiba, as another person, or as you and me, he realizes, oh, so this was the reality. So that is why Holi as an entire idea, as an entire concept is deconstructed, or maybe it is destroyed, right? Good and evil के जो ideas है, जो मायने है ना, वही बदल जाते हैं. तो पहले ये establish किया जाता था कि हिरण्यकशिपु बुरे है और प्रहलाद सही है, नरसिंह सही है, right? जो कि विष्णु के अवतार को समझा जाता था. बट महात्मा फुले यहाँ पर करते क्या है? महात्मा फुले बेसिकली डिस्ट्रॉयज दिस एंटायर कंसेप्ट ऑफ गुड एंड इविल. He brings the concept of the depressed classes and the conquerors, right? Now this idea can be seen further when he creates counter narratives. काउंटर नैरेटिव्स मतलब जो नैरेटिव आपका डोमिनेंट नैरेटिव है, जो आपकी बात है, उसे काउंटर करने के लिए मैं एक और दूसरी बात कह रही हूँ जिसका उतना ही ज्यादा मायना होगा. In the simplest ways to speak. So to talk about counter narratives, you'll find it in the next parts of Gulamgiri. By the way, I would really request all of you to go through it, to read it. It's a very enlightening book. Okay, so basically counter narratives में महात्मा फुले करते हैं एक बहुत दिलचस्प बात, and that is he creates his own stories. Now these stories are not created in air, right? He has basic evidences. Okay, now based on these evidences he gains more and more research, he gains more and more mileage to the stories that he is written in Gulamgiri. So first example I would like to give you guys is of Bari Raja. If you guys belong to Maharashtra and if you guys have heard of this, in Maharashtra there is a very important saying, famous saying in Dashera, Ida Pida Taro, Bari se Raja Yeo, right? So Bari Raja, right? He is a very important figure in basically Maharashtrian mythology. Now Bali was a basically Indian ruler who had a very benevolent way of ruling. People were happy in his kingdom, right? And इसका आपको एग्जाम्पल भी मिलेगा. अगर आप साउथ ईस्ट एशिया का मैप देखो तो वहां पे एक आइलैंड देश है जिसका नाम है बाली, राइट? सो जो बाली देश है ना, वो दैट वाज अ पार्ट ऑफ द किंगडम ऑफ बाली, राइट? द बाली राज, द बड़ी राजा दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, right? So this is the evidence that Mahatma Jyotirao Phule basically gives you, right? Further, he says that his kingdom was so huge that in south it was called as Rashtra, which was a huge Rashtra. That is why it was called as Maharashtra, right? Now I'm going to use these words which are basically taken from Apabhransh Marathi, right? These are Marathi words, so I'll try my best to explain them to you. All right, so Maha is huge, Rashtra is nation, so Maharashtra, the name that our state takes from today, and people who were living in Maharashtra were called as Maharashtri, and the slang version of Maharashtri would be Marathi, right? Marathe. Okay, that's how the whole community of Marathas basically came into being. Further, in this entire huge kingdom, for administrative purposes, Bari Raja divides his entire kingdom into 9 different parts. Okay. Now these 9 different parts are basically in Marathi, parts are khanda, right? If you guys have heard of khandas, okay. So these 9 different parts or khanda would be under officers in charge, and these officers were called as khandoba. Okay, now there are these 9 khandobas who were in charge of their different units. Okay, and they would basically administer with a lot of benevolence, with a lot of kindness, right? And that is why the administration of Bari Raja was very awesome at that point of time. Okay, so there is a very important thing to remember here. Under every Khandoba, there were these pehelwans or bodies of wrestlers. Okay, these were called as mallas, right? Now these mallas would basically fight for Khandobas. Okay, now every Khandoba would be entrusted with the responsibility of protecting his or his province. Okay, so there was a place called Jejuri. It's still there in Maharashtra. Okay, so जेजुरी में जो खंडोबा है ना, वो प्रोटेक्ट करते थे अपने किंगडम को फ्रॉम द मल्लास और द पहलवान्स ऑफ अदर किंगडम्स, and he would destroy the mallas of other units, other khandobas basically. That is why he was called as Malla Ari. Ari is destroyer or enemy, and enemy of mallas is Mallari. So वो बाद में उसका slang version हो गया Malhari, right? Now Jejuri's Khandoba basically was a very beautiful singer. He was an artist kind of personality. right? And because he would make songs, he would make music, right? उस पर से राग मल्हार बताया गया है, राग मल्हार लिया गया है. ओके, फर्दर ऑन अगर आप देखो तो तानसेन तानसेन जो मल्हार राग को यूज करते हैं, जो बनाते हैं, वो उनके म्यूजिक पर बेस्ड है. This is the narrative or the counter narrative that Mahatma Jyotirao Phule basically gives us all. Okay, further there was a province. ठीक है, provinces में जो आपके रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन, एग्रीकल्चरल रेवेन्यू को देखते थे, उनको महासूबा कहते थे, राइट? जिसका एंग्लिसाइज्ड जिसका अपभ्रंशिक वर्जन हो गया मसूबा. सो जो आप मेरे स्क्रीन पर देख रहे हैं ना, वो एक्चुअली उनके फोटोज है जो आज तक उनको पूजा जाता है. In Maharashtra, if you come, you'll find Masoba, Khandoba, Bhairoba. These are basically idols, deities which have been till date worshipped by people, right? And they were none other but officers in charge in Bari Raja's kingdom, right? That is the counter narrative that Mahatma Jyotirao Phule gives us on, right? Further, he talks about the concept of apabhransha, using the evidence from language, the way we pronounce in Marathi, the different words. He comes to a conclusion of cultural history of Maharashtra. Okay, for example, now the people who were the original inhabitants of the Indian subcontinent, okay, they would protect their subcontinent against the invaders, which were the Aryans, okay, the ancestors of the Brahmins basically. That is why they were called as Rakshak. Rakshak is protector, right? But then in the more local or blatant use or the apabhranshik use, Rakshak becomes Rakshas. Okay, and that is how Brahmanical hierarchies or Brahmanical dominance were seen in the ideas of language, right? How language can empower you and disempower you, right? So those people who were originally protectors of their cows and their animals, because Aryans would come and they would eat horse, they would eat cows, they would destroy kingdoms like nothing, right? And the people who would basically fight for their own families, fight for their own kingdoms, they were called as Rakshas, right? In their own scriptures. If you read the Vedic scriptures, you would understand that even much better. Similarly, the word bhrashta, okay, bhrashta was a Sanskrit term which was used, and in apabhranshik terms it became bhat. So in Marathi you may have heard the word bhat brahman. So bhat is basically an apabhranshik term of bhrashta. Similarly, when Brahma started writing, he would write in a language which was known by everyone at that point of time. Okay, that is why it was Sarvakrut. Okay, a language which was made by everyone or known to everyone. Sarvakrut became Sanskrit in apabhranshik terms. Similarly, those people who would slay or who would defeat the Brahmins who would come to their subcontinent or their region, they were called as Maha-Ari, right? Maha means great or large, okay? And Ari is enemy or destroyer, right? So Maha-Ari का Mahari हो गया, जिसका Mahar अपभ्रंशिक term हो गया, अपभ्रंशिक language, right? Similarly, the idea is Mahari का Mahar हो गया, which you can see in the scheduled caste communities. अगर आपको पता है, Mahar is a community, right? वैसे ही when the Aryan conquerors, they would want to administer the places that they have won, so they would keep officers in charge of revenue, जिनको कहा जाता था कुड़ेवाड़ी, जिनका अपभ्रंशिक टर्म हो गया जिनका कुड़ेकर्णी, जिनका अपभ्रंशिक टर्म हो गया कुलकर्णी, राइट? एंड द रायोत और द फार्मर्स जिनसे रेवेन्यू लिया जाता था, जिनको शूद्र कहा जाता था, वो बन गए आपके कुनबी. जो आज भी वो क्लस्टर आप देख पाते हैं महाराष्ट्र में, द कुंडी कम्युनिटी, right? They are still the agriculturals, they are still the depressed classes, as in not depressed classes, but they are the poor classes or the poorer sections of the Maratha community basically, right? And then started the whole idea of untouchability. So होता ऐसे था कि जब ये सारे कॉन्करर्स इंडिया आते थे, इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट में, तब इन्होंने ना बहुत सारे महार्स को हराया था, महाआरी को हराया था. But when Mahar started defeating them, right, defeating these Brahmin conquerors, right, so the Brahmin conquerors like Varaha, Narsinha, they started boycotting the Mahars. कि इनके हाथों से हम खाना भी नहीं खाएंगे, right, इनको तो हम छुएंगे भी नहीं, इनके पास हम खड़े भी नहीं रहेंगे. That was the origin of the entire idea of untouchability. That is the idea that the whole taboo of purity and impurity started, right? That is how Mahatma Phule basically brings to us the whole concept of cultural history of dominance and power, right? I really hope आप लोग को समझ रहा है. Further, there's a very interesting concept of the idea of power and slavery. Okay, so I'm going to tell you stories. Okay, ये कहानी है, तो हम इन कहानियों को ना आज से भी कनेक्ट करने वाले हैं. So basically, Mahatma Jyotirao Phule says that black magic and superstitions were used to basically keep or bind the lower classes in shackles, in chains, right? So in India, there was something called as religious slavery of the Brahmins. Okay, so what Brahmins did was they would say that हमारे शास्त्रों में ऐसा लिखा है, वो शास्त्र जो भगवान ने हमें दिए हैं, right, जो संस्कृत में लिखे हैं, इसीलिए हम जो कह रहे हैं वो सही है. So superstitious और black magic जो वो यूज कर रहे हैं, वो शूद्रस के अगेंस्ट द होल मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द किंगडम यूज किए जा रहे हैं, वो जस्टिफाइड है क्योंकि वो शास्त्रों में लिखे हैं और शास्त्र तो लोग पढ़ नहीं सकते. सो दैट इज हाउ पीपल eventually started listening to the Brahmins. They started obeying to the Brahmins. Now Mahatma Phule says, is magic existent? Is magic true? So Mahatma Phule says, yes, hypnotism होता है, right? मैजिक हो सकता है, कोई ऐसी विद्या जो हिप्नोटाइज करे या जो आपको मंत्रमुग्ध कर दे, है ना, ये पाई जाती है. बंगाल की तरह, बंगाल का जो एरिया है आज का, जो आपका बंगाल है, वहां पर आपको ऐसी विद्याएं सीखने को मिलेगी, राइट? बट इसका यूज करना और इसके यूज के बाद इसे सुपरस्टिशंस बनाना, right, लोगों को इससे ऑप्रेस करना, this was the idea which was taken from the Brahmin Hinduism, the scriptures और या भगवत पुराण और या मनुस्मृति, जहां पे ये सारी बातें लिखी गई है. That is what महात्मा फुले says. Further, अगर आप इस किताब की शुरुआत देखोगे तो शुरुआत में महात्मा फुले ने ये किताब डेडिकेट की है टू हिज ब्लैक ब्रदर्स, राइट? इसका मतलब उन्हें, इमेजिन एक ऐसा इंसान जो कभी इंडिया छोड़कर गया नहीं है, यूएस नहीं गया है, अफ्रीका नहीं गया है, बट ही अंडरस्टैंड्स द प्लाइट ऑफ द ब्लैक ब्रदरहुड, राइट, द नीग्रोज, और वो उन्हें अपने ब्रदरहुड में अपने भाई कह रहे हैं, राइट? दैट मीन्स ही इक्वेट्स द स्लेवरी ऑफ कास्ट विद द स्लेवरी ऑफ रेस, राइट? जो रंग है, वर्ण है, वो वर्ण के ऊपर जो स्लेवरी है ना, गुलामगिरी है, उसकी उन्होंने बात की है. दैट इज व्हाई ही सेज कि जो यूरोपियंस आने के बाद यूरोपियन एमेंसिपेशन शुरू हुआ है, उसमें आपका एक नया बड़ी राजा आया है, एंड दैट बली राजा इज जीसस क्राइस्ट. Jesus Christ is basically the emancipator of Shudras for Mahatma Phule. Why? Because with the Europeans, with the whole missionaries, started the advent of education for Shudras, right? Ab Shudras were empowered to go to schools and get the same educations that their Brahmin counterparts were eligible for. because the European, the Portuguese or the British, right, they would not understand the ideas of dominance of Hinduism and Brahmanism, right? So that is how Mahatma Phule understands that modernity is crucial for the understanding of empowerment. Okay. Further, he brings in the last few parts of Gulamgiri the idea of institutionalized Brahmanism. Institutionalized Brahmanism मतलब एक आइडिया है कि ब्राह्मण सबसे सुपीरियर है, बट इस आइडिया को आप इतना ज्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग बनाते हो कि आज आपके ऑफिसेस में, आपके स्कूल में, आपके कॉलेजेस में ये बात एक तरह से बन गई है एंड स्ट्रेंथन हो गई है. ठीक है, ये कैसे पॉसिबल हो सकता है, बेसिकली द आइडिया. So Mahatma Phule says that when Europeans came to India, when Britishers came to India, Britishers wanted people to work for them, right? So that India can be administered efficiently, right? So Brahmins saw their benefit in this. And that is why they were the first people, hold on. So basically, they were the first people to get education from the Europeans, and not only education, they were the first people to get those employment wali posts, right? They were the first people who basically recognized that the Europeans, the Britishers, were here to stay, right? People, can you please tell me, is my screen visible to you? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys understand me? Yeah?
Yes. Yes,
Yes,
it's clear and we understand you. Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you so much for your response. Thank you. All right, so I'll just continue. Yeah, just in case if you guys are bored and you need a break, you can tell me even in that situation, right? I would not mind.
You're
Can
going
you,
amazing.
Oh, thank you.
yeah,
So,
just make your PPT on a full screen mode, so it will be like
full screen, yes, I'll do that. I'm anyway on the second last slide, and yeah, just give me a moment, okay? Okay, can you see it now?
yes. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So the next point that I was trying to tell you was that Brahmins basically started usurping the government offices. There's this very important, very funny comedian called as Kunal Kamra, if you guys know about him. He says he made a very important statement in his stand-up comedy. He says that the Supreme Court, okay, is worse than the food court of your malls, right? He says that this, at least food court mein har ek ko khana milta hai, but the Supreme Court is a Brahmin baniya affair, right? Now this is a very important point that he makes from the point of view of narratives, because even Mahatma Jyotirao Phule brought this idea in Gulamgiri part 11 and 12. Okay, that Brahmins were the first to take the advantage of their hierarchy, their privileged positions, and that is how they could sit at the highest topmost offices, right? Further, at that point of time, there were the Peshwai or the Peshwas that were ruling in Maharashtra, and they were extremely tyrannical when it came to the poor depressed classes, the Shudras. जो agricultural laborers होते थे वो Shudras होते थे. So what Peshwas would do was they would have these big lavish feasts, okay, जहाँ पर 100 ब्राह्मणों को खाना खिलाया जाता था, राइट? तो महात्मा फुले इस तरह की भाषा यूज करते हैं कि उनका पेट बाहर आने तक आप उनको खाना खिलाते थे, जहाँ पे ऑन द अदर हैंड यू हैड a woman and a child, a Shudra pregnant woman and a child starving to death in the Peshwa kingdom, right? So this was the language that was used by Mahatma Phule, which was terrible at that point of time from the point of view of the politics that was going on, and he had the guts to say what he meant, like what he meant to say, basically. So that was amazing. And that is how he could basically garner the confidence of the Europeans. That is how he could basically enlist the support of the Europeans to start schools for the depressed classes, for the downtrodden. Okay. Now, the idea was that we would start school for girls, right? That is how Savitribai Phule comes into picture, right? Now, Savitribai Phule is an entire different movie, a different phase of reading and knowledge altogether, and I would not be able to do justice in this session. So, but for some other sessions, I would love to discuss her. But that's how education started for our Shudra brothers and sisters, right? And that is how English became the privilege, or English became the mode of communication which could counter Sanskrit, राइट. सो ये बहुत जरूरी बात है कि भाषा आपको एम्पावर करती है या डिसएम्पावर करती है. तो जैसे आपके पास अगर इंग्लिश का नॉलेज है तो यू विल फील कि ओ आई कैन एक्चुअली हैव द कॉन्फिडेंस टू स्पीक विद एनीवन. Similarly, people at that time had the confidence for Sanskrit. If you had the idea or the means to speak in Sanskrit, to understand Sanskrit, you automatically had a privileged position in the society, right? Now, this privilege was deconstructed and destroyed by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule when he insisted on the idea of vernacular education, right? Vernacular education and English education, education for science, education for rationality, right? This was the idea which was very important to counter Brahmanical dominance, which is given in part 14 and part 15 of Gulamgiri. Further, इसके बाद जब ये मिशनरी एक्टिविटीज बढ़ती गई तब उस वक्त पे देयर वर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस जो महात्मा फुले की इस सारी मूवमेंट को, सत्यशोधक समाज का जो मूवमेंट था उसे काउंटर करने के लिए बनी गई थी. बेसिकली उनका जो ट्रेडिशनल कंजर्वेटिव आउटलुक था वो था टू रिटेन और सस्टेन या टू ब्रिंग बैक the Brahmanical dominance of Hinduism. And one of that organization was the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, right? जिससे even Lokmanya Tilak was associated, right? उनके views उनके साथ associated है, right? So महात्मा फुले के आइडियाज जो थे वो ये थे कि ये जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है, these are not for liberals, these are not for liberal reforms or for modern reforms. They are going to pull down all the support, all the work that सत्यशोधक समाज has done till date. और फिर यही होता है. In 1857, there is an entire uprising against the Europeans. But Mahatma Jyotirao Phule 1857 revolt को ब्रिटिश वर्सेस इंडिया नहीं देखते. वो इनको ब्राह्मणिकल हिंदुइज्म वर्सेस इमेंसिपेटरी क्रिश्चियनिटी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखते हैं. पूरा 1857 का रिवॉल्ट, क्योंकि महात्मा ज्योतिराव फुले और उनके जो कॉलीग्स थे उन्होंने जो डिप्रेस्ड क्लासेस है, जो सबऑल्टर्न्स है, उनके पास एजुकेशन पहुंचे, इसके लिए उन्होंने इतनी ज्यादा मेहनत की थी और सारी मेहनत पे पानी फिर गया. क्योंकि 1857 रिवॉल्ट के बाद the Britishers they started increasing their taxes because उनको बहुत ज्यादा लॉस हुआ. उन्होंने टैक्सेस बढ़ा दिए और टैक्स किसको देने पड़े? लेबरर्स को, एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट को. और खेतों पे काम करने वाला जो बंदा है वो तो शूद्र है, वो तो दलित है, तो टैक्स उसको ज्यादा देना पड़ेगा ना. जो ब्राह्मण है, जो कुलकर्णी है, उसको तो कोई नुकसान नहीं हो रहा है. This is the idea that Mahatma Phule talks about in Gulamgiri. That ये सारा अपराइजिंग किया ब्राह्मणों ने था, बट इनको भुगतना पड़ रहा है by the depressed classes. वो जो ऑलरेडी पीड़ित है, जिनका कुछ भला हो सक रहा था बट अभी वो भी नहीं होगा, राइट? तो धोंडीबा उनको पूछते हैं, बट ये कैसे पॉसिबल होता है कि ब्राह्मण्स एक्चुअली कॉलेजेस को, ऑफिसेस को, सारी जगह पे डोमिनेट कर रहे हैं और सारे जगह पे जा जाकर जो डिप्रेस्ड क्लासेस हैं उनको दबाए रख रहे हैं, उनको अलाउ नहीं कर रहे हैं. तो महात्मा ज्योतिराव फुले ही गिव्स एग्जाम्पल कि बेशक ऐसा हो रहा है। आप जरा देखिए, अगर आप एग्रीकल्चरल लेबरर्स को, वर्कर्स को देख रहे हो, तो वो तो इलिटरेट है ना, उन्हें तो पढ़ना लिखना भी नहीं आता। इन दैट केस जो जमींदार है, जो कुलकर्णी है, वो उनके दस्तखत ले रहा है, झूठे दस्तखत ले रहा है ऑन एनी पेपर्स, जहां पर वो उनको लोन दे रहा है एंड 1000 गुना ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट मार रहा है, राइट? एंड जब उस शूद्र को, दैट पुअर शूद्र एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट, व्हेन ही रियलाइजेस कि यार उसके साथ इतना बड़ा धोखा हुआ है, तब वो जाता है कोर्ट कचहरी, राइट? अब कोर्ट कचहरी एक्चुअली एक यूरोपियन चला रहा है, बट जो क्लर्क है, जो उसकी कंप्लेन लिखेगा, वो तो ब्राह्मण है, और वो इस शूद्र को खड़ा क्यों करेगा इन दैट कोर्ट, राइट? वो तो इसकी कंप्लेन भी नहीं सुनेगा। This is still evident even in today's day and age. अगर आप महाराष्ट्र के prisons के अंडर ट्रायल्स को देखें, तो अंडर ट्रायल्स में जो दलित है, जो लोअर कास्ट के हैं और जो मुस्लिम्स है, वो आपको ज्यादा मिलेंगे, राइट? बिकॉज यू फाइंड दिस इनहेरेंट prejudice or inherent dominance of the privileged upper classes in the attitude and mentality, right? महात्मा ज्योतिराव फुले भी यही बात कहते हैं। अगर आप कॉलेजेस में जाते हो, तो कॉलेजेस में तो वो आपको बैठने तक नहीं देते, भले ही वो कॉलेज यूरोपियन का हो, right? And Europeans do not understand why this kind of discrimination. Europeans do not understand from where did this kind of hierarchy and dominance come up, right? यूरोपियंस थॉट कि अगर हम एक छोटे तबके को एजुकेशन देंगे, उन्हें एजुकेट कराएंगे, तो ये छोटा तबका हमारे लिए काम करेगा, हमारे ऑफिस को चलाएगा, और ये तबके से बाकी लोग भी एजुकेटेड होंगे। बट Europeans did not know that this chota tabka was of the Brahmins, who would never want any kind of education to reach the other parts of the community, other parts of the society. वो चाहेंगे कि उन्हीं के पास सारी पावर रहे। And this was the idea given by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule in part 16, part 15 and part 16 of Gulamgiri, right? So Mahatma Jyotirao Phule basically says कि इस पर आप solution क्या दे सकते हो? सोल्यूशन के लिए उन्होंने कहा कि मेरिट बेस्ड सिलेक्शन होना चाहिए, राइट? अगर आपकी कोई भी पोस्ट हो, फिर वो पाटिल की हो, कुलकर्णी की हो, तो उसके लिए आप सारे कास्ट के लोगों को एक साथ बुलाएं, राइट? हर कास्ट में जो भी पावरफुल होगा, जो भी एलिजिबल होगा, उसको बुलाएं, उसका एग्जाम लिया जाए एंड फिर उसको उस पोस्ट पे रखा जाए, राइट? इनफैक्ट जो कलेक्टर होगा, जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट होगा, that person will have to, that European district magistrate will have to keep regular checks कि जो कुलकर्णीज है, जो पाटिल है, वो ठीक से अपना काम कर रहे हैं ना, वो ऑप्रेस तो नहीं कर रहे। ये रूटीन चेक होना चाहिए, इन्हें क्वेश्चन करना चाहिए, राइट? इन्हें ये बात रियलाइज करनी चाहिए कि जो लोअर तबके पे, जो ग्राउंड लेवल पर हो रहा है ना, वो कास्टिज्म जो नजर नहीं आता, उसे कैसे रोका जाए। एंड दैट इज व्हाट महात्मा फुले डज इन हिज लास्ट पार्ट। ओके, अगर आप आज भी देखेंगे, तो आज भी ये नैरेटिव आपको दिखाई देता है दैट the students from the depressed classes, the students who come from the Dalit community, they basically do not have any kind of merit, and that is why they go through a lot of emotional and intellectual bullying, a lot of ragging, and they have to see a lot of problems and stigmas, especially in government affiliated institutions like the IITs and the IIMs. ये मैंने एक मीम में पढ़ा था कि IIT बॉम्बे में एक गाय जा सकती है बट एक दलित नहीं जा सकता, राइट? सो ये आइडिया था, ये नैरेटिव है जो आज भी प्रेवलेंट है, राइट? आज भी भले ही बच्चों में कितना ही ज्यादा टैलेंट हो, कितना ही ज्यादा कैपेबिलिटीज हो, you will find that these kind of blatant discrimination can be observed at the level of food, at the level of clothes, at the level of judgments passed on just your existence, okay, you're belonging to that community, right? So last but not the least, let's talk let's end this on a positive note. What do we learn from Gulamgiri, or what does Mahatma Phule have to share with us? So basically, Mahatma Phule says that narratives can only be deconstructed or defeated with counter narratives based on empirical evidence. कि आप प्रूफ लाइए, एविडेंस लाइए और अपने काउंटर नैरेटिव्स बनाइए. जब आप काउंटर नैरेटिव बनाते हैं ना, तब आपके जो मेजर नैरेटिव है उसको आप हरा सकते हो, राइट? तो अब ये काउंटर नैरेटिव कैसे क्रिएट हो रहा है? जैसे कि अगर कोई ये कहता है कि नहीं, दलित बच्चों में तो कोई टैलेंट होता ही नहीं है, राइट? उनमें कोई कैपेबिलिटीज होती नहीं है. दिस इज अ नैरेटिव. वो तो रिजर्वेशन से ही आता है, उनका कास्ट है तो वो कहीं पे भी आ जाएंगे, राइट? दिस इज अ नैरेटिव. द काउंटर नैरेटिव इज you come up to the topmost position based on your marks, right? You become IAS officers, you come to IITs, IIM, and you pass it through. You sit at the topmost hierarchy. जैसे डॉक्टर B.R. अम्बेडकर कहते हैं that it is your job to be a part of the cabinet, the highest position of the government, the country, right? You try to reach there. If not reach there, at least try to make an effort, राइट? क्योंकि काउंटर नैरेटिव्स तभी क्रिएट होते हैं जब नैरेटिव्स को पहचानने की, उनको जवाब देने की काबिलियत हो, राइट? दैट इज एसेंशियली द आइडिया. फर्दर, Mahatma Phule says that you can only empower yourself. Do not wait someone else would come and he would do something for you or she would do something for you. ऐसा नहीं होता है. आपको ही खुद का ख्याल रखना है, राइट? एंड दैट इज व्हेन एजुकेशन कम्स टू पिक्चर, राइट? जब आप एजुकेशन को परस्यू करते हैं, जब आप खुद को ज्यादा स्ट्रेंथन करते हैं, ज्यादा सॉलिडिफाई करते हैं थ्रू एजुकेशन, दैट इज व्हेन यू गेन नॉलेज. दैट इज व्हेन यू कैन सी व्हाट इज गोइंग ऑन एट द ग्राउंड लेवल. राइट एंड रॉन्ग को डिस्टिंग्विश आप कर सकते हैं, राइट? महात्मा ज्योतिराव फुले खुद एक स्कॉटिश मिशनरी स्कूल से पढ़े थे. थॉमस पेन की किताबें पढ़ी है उन्होंने. तब जब उनको पता चला कि रैशनैलिटी क्या होती है, सच झूठ, अच्छा बुरा, ऊंच नीच क्या होता है, राइट? और अगर ये आप हर एक को सिर्फ एजुकेशन तक पहुंचाते हैं, एजुकेशन की लिमिट तक पहुंचाते हैं ना, तब आगे वो बंदा खुद का खुद देखेगा. दैट इज द आइडिया दैट महात्मा फुले गिव्स इन गुलामगिरी. Further, he says a very important point. You always question the given, right? अगर आपको कोई कुछ बोल रहा है कि अरे sun rises in the east and sets in the west, you question it, right? आप कोई भी बात चुपचाप एक्सेप्ट ना करें. अगर मैं आपको ये पूरा लेक्चर दे रही हूँ गुलामगिरी पे, you question me too, right? किताब खुद पढ़े और खुद जाने, right? Because what happens is when you question what is given, what you are doing is you are refusing to be a part of this entire narrative discourse, okay? And that is how you do not allow one person to become powerful, right? अगर आपके पास कोई बंदा आके कहता है कि आप में टैलेंट नहीं है, आप में मेरिट नहीं है, क्यों नहीं है, on what grounds, on what basis, right? Question the narrative, right? That is how you take the first step of breaking the hierarchy, breaking the dominance of power, right? And last but not the least, insist on rationality, right? कोई भी religion हो, कोई भी concept हो, कोई भी बंदा हो, बड़े से बड़ा, अमीर से अमीर, great से greatest बंदा हो, insist on rationality, scientific rationality. क्या ये सही है, क्यों सही है, कितना सही है, कितना गलत है? जस्ट बिकॉज आप कह रहे हैं इसीलिए सही है, या जस्ट बिकॉज आप कह रहे हैं इसीलिए गलत है? इसे पूछिए, रैशनैलिटी को यूज कीजिए. दैट इज द होल आइडिया दैट यू वुड फाइंड इन गुलामगिरी. Okay, so I think I am up from the time perspective. I am done. And if there are any questions, anyone would like to share anything or comment or compliment anything, you can please go ahead.
Thank you for wonderful session. It is excellent narrative session. So I would like to request to participation. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and unmute yourself, and then you can ask a question. Thank you. There is a question in chat box.
Yes, Charu Datta has raised hand. Okay, Charudat, would you like to speak your question? I would like to hear you or see you if that's possible too.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much, Mansi, for the excellent session. Yeah, I have a small question. Like you said about uh, the uh, untouchability thing. But in Rigved, if we read some books of Baba Sahib, they mentioned there were only three varnas were there earlier, like Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. And then when Kshatriya, like made the non-corporation movement, or this fight happens, then this Brahmins actually stop contributing to the this Kshatriyas group, and now this Kshatriya is become Shudras. So is it like true, or like what you said is true?
Okay, Charudat, firstly, thank you so much for a very enlightening question. I would actually like to bring this point to you. So, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar considers Mahatma Jyotirao Phule as his guru, right? So, most of his thoughts have been inspired by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, right? But being a student, he takes the whole narrative, the whole discourse 2 steps ahead, right? So, the idea remains the same. So Mahatma Phule says that the person was a superior person. The Mahar who would defeat the Brahmin is a superior person, right? And to boycott this Mahar, the Brahmin would not touch the food. The Brahmin would not touch or not even have the shadow on road. That is how untouchability starts, right? But Dr. Ambedkar provides with another analysis, which is again a narrative or a counter narrative for that matter. So the idea that he gives is very much similar to Mahatma Phule, right? He also says that there were wars, there were conflicts, and through these conflicts, the entire non-cooperation or the entire boycott mentality started of an entire community, right? So basically, in essence, both of them are saying the same thing, that the Brahmins started boycotting those who they could not defeat. Getting it? I hope I was able to satisfy your query.
Yeah. So I was thinking on the same line. It's like one and the same thing, but narrative is there. But it's very important point. Like people were always, discriminating. Like there was like fourth varna, though it's like it's a narrative, but it's not like fourth varna. Basically, it is a like it's a part of Kshatriya only, and they just created a separate group, and now we have the same
In
struggle.
fact, Kshatriya as an entire community, uh, Mahatma Phule considers even them in the Mahars, because even those were distinguished and differentiated by the Brahmins, right?
Yeah,
So what Mahatma Phule does is he comes up with a very easy distinction. There are Brahmins and there are Shudras, right? If you're not a Brahmin, you are a Shudra, because you are going to be treated that way,
yeah.
right? That is the whole idea. I think Shraddha has a very important question. Shraddha, would you like to question that? Would you like to read it?
Yes, and also I have another question. Like, as you described, narratives are so powerful, and you also know there are so many other social narratives we have in our community.
Right. Shraddha, your phone got muted, I guess.
Yes. So, how can we use this? Actually, I really appreciate what you have spoken so far. It's so enlightening. Actually, the thing is, not everybody is reading the book. So, the way we are conducting this session are really helping our people to, making aware about the books, what's actually written in them. So, my question was, I'm really impressed with how narrative works, because mostly students they believe in the research. So I want to know how we can use this narrative to empower people and make it a more research based. And also, I wrote down the question if you can read.
Oh
So I would
yeah.
really
Just a
love
minute.
to.
I just read it. Okay, yeah, right. I'm so sorry. I didn't see the chat section. Okay, I have questions related narrative. It can be made with time. So in comparison to research and narrative, which one should follow? How to make narrative better back up with research. Okay, let's see what Mahatma Phule does here. Okay, it may help us to answer your question. Okay, so what Mahatma Phule does is he looks at evidences. Okay, क्या बलि राजा कहाँ से आता है? Because there is a kingdom called as Bali, right? Because in Maharashtra, people say ida pida taro bali se rajya ye ho.
Yes.
So these are evidences, right? So you bring evidences to the fore. Okay, जब आप ऐसे proof लाते हैं ना, तब जाके proofs के ऊपर की जो story है उसे आप बना सकते हो या उसे आप ढूंढ सकते हो. Basically that is the idea. Okay, you will find a lot of stories in Hindu mythology. अगर आपको वो वाली एक story पता होगी of Raja Bali, that there was a Brahmin who comes to a beggar who comes and he says कि I want 3 things from the Raja. So he says आप 3 चीजों पे पैर रखिए वो आपकी हो जाएगी. So वो पहला पैर रखता है जमीन पर तो पूरी धरती उनकी हो जाती है. हाँ, वैसे आसमान पर पैर रखता है तो पूरा आसमान उनका हो जाता है. तो बोलता है कि तीसरा पैर मैं कहाँ रखूं? तो राजा से कि बड़ी राजा ही सेज कि आप मेरे सर पे रखिए. ठीक है, मुझे तो लगा था कि बोला अभी कहाँ रखेगा, रख दे मेरे सर पे. दैट वाज द एटीट्यूड दैट वाज यूज्ड इन द स्टोरी, बट इट वाज नॉट दैट. बट महात्मा फुले क्वेश्चंस दिस नैरेटिव. तो महात्मा फुले बोलते हैं कि अगर वो इतना बड़ा इंसान है तो उसका सर हमेशा हवा में रहना चाहिए, उसका पैर हमेशा नीचे ही रहना चाहिए. तो अगर ये बंदा इस बलि राजा को पूछ रहा है कि मैं अपना तीसरा पैर कहाँ रखूं, तो बलि राजा की आवाज कैसे पहुंचेगी उस बंदे तक? सोचिए, राइट? वैसे ही महात्मा फुले क्वेश्चंस यूजिंग साइंस, राइट? सो ब्रह्मा, मैंने आपको स्टोरी बताई कि ब्रह्मा के हेड से जैसे ब्राह्मण निकलते हैं, पैर से जैसे शूद्र निकल रहे हैं. तो वो कहते हैं, महात्मा फुले कहते हैं कि अगर ऐसा है तो ब्रह्मा को 4 हेड है, राइट? 4 हेड है. तो अगर उसको 4 हेड है तो उसको 8 ब्रेस्ट होने चाहिए, 4 बेली बटन होने चाहिए एंड 4 यूरिनरी कैनाल होने चाहिए, यूरेथ्रा होने चाहिए. बट ऐसा तो कहीं किसी भी किताब में नहीं लिखा, राइट? इसका मतलब व्हाट Mahatma Phule does a very simple thing. He uses science. He uses normal logic. कि आप जो कह रहे हो ना सबसे पहले मनु का जन्म हुआ है, अरे मनु की माँ कहाँ गई? That is the normal question that he uses. He doesn't look at books and stuff. ये तो बहुत रोजमर्रा की बात है. हाँ, आप और मेरी जो साइंस हम ऑलरेडी जानते हैं वो वाली बात है, right? Further, he even looks at the understanding of the whole Aryan invasion. कि यार मत्स्य, for example, पुराणों में लिखा है कि मत्स्य एक्चुअली ना मछली के पेट से निकले थे, कछुए के पेट से निकले थे, इसलिए कछुए. ठीक है. वराह, वराह इज पिग. तो वराह की जो पेरेंट्स है वो पिग है, पिग थे. दैट्स व्हाई उनको वराह कहा गया है. तो महात्मा फुले बोलते हैं ये कैसे पॉसिबल है, राइट? You need to have sexual relations with a pig to bear the kid, right? ऐसा तो कहीं लिखा नहीं है. So श्रद्धा, what my point was that आप ना जो आपको नैरेटिव आपके सामने लाकर रखा है ना, उसे साइंस और रैशनैलिटी पे क्वेश्चन कीजिए, राइट? जो महात्मा फुले करते हैं. That is how things become easy, right? There is a very simple example that I would like to give you. मेरे एक प्रोफेसर ने कहा था कि यू कैन नेवर यूज द वर्ड हिंदुस्तान और एनी अदर वर्ड फॉर आवर कंट्री, बिकॉज आपके पास एक किताब है जहां पे लिखा है फर्स्ट आर्टिकल इंडिया दैट इज भारत शैल बी अ यूनियन ऑफ स्टेट्स. तो आपके पास रिटन एविडेंस है दैट इट इज आइदर इंडिया और भारत, राइट? सो यू कैन नॉट हैव एनी अदर imposing narrative. Getting it? It is as simple as that. I hope I can answer your question.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, is there any other question?
Yeah,
Can
yeah. One question is
Yeah.
that oh, sorry.
Nutan wanted to ask the question, I guess.
No, no, no. I'm not asking. Actually, one question is in the chat box.
Okay.
Tanaji is asking that where did the Aryans came from?
Okay. So, Tanaji, thank you for this question. Now, there have been various theories, okay, on where did the Aryans actually come from. Okay, and looking at the present narrative, अगर आप देखोगे तो लोग ये भी बोलेंगे नहीं आर्यंस का जन्म इंडिया में ही हुआ था, राइट? तो आपको ये भी जवाब मिलेगा. But I will stick to the idea that Mahatma Jyotirao Phule speaks in गुलामगिरी, because right now I'm dealing with one text, और उन्होंने कहा है कि वो ईरान से आते हैं. Okay, and there have been various evidences, जैसे कि जो भाषा है संस्कृत की जो लैंग्वेज है और जो यूरोपियन लैंग्वेजेस है उनमें आपको बहुत सिमिलैरिटी देखने को मिलेगी. Okay, so there is a theory that Aryans have come from European side, right? जैसे कि मात्र, भ्रात्र, मात्र का मदर, भ्रात्र का ब्रदर. हाँ, तो इस तरह के जो सिमिलैरिटीज है वो आपको ज़ेन दावेस्त में देखने को मिलेंगे, जो कि एक ईरानियन किताब है. ठीक है, तो महात्मा फुले बेसिकली गिव्स यू दिस एविडेंस कि आर्यंस बेसिकली इंडिया के है ही नहीं, वो आए थे ईरान से, और वो भी थ्रू सी, बोट से आए थे. दैट इज द आइडिया.
You just said Europe and then Iran. I was confused about that thing.
No, I was telling you that there are various theories कि आर्यंस कहाँ से आए हैं, right? There are various narratives, but right now because I'm dealing with Mahatma Phule, because I'm dealing with गुलामगिरी, मैं आपको ये बता रही हूँ कि उन्होंने कहा है कि वो ईरान से आते हैं. तो अभी के लिए हम यहाँ पे स्टिक करते हैं, because it is again a huge debate. उसके लिए बहुत सारे evidences लाने पड़ेंगे और उसमें इतना टाइम में होगा नहीं वो. ठीक है?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Tanaji. Thank you.
Yeah,
Shata.
Mansi, thank you very much. Can I ask a question now?
Yeah,
Until-
before that, Dhale sir, please, Chetan Dhakane is already raised his hand, so I will allow her, and then after that, okay. Yeah, please, Chetan.
Jebim, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Yeah, Jebim Mansi, the session is very interesting, very informative, and I really enjoyed it. In the PowerPoint presentation, you were talking about the creation of counter narratives, and you were talking very in detail about Badi Raja, Khandoba, Masoba, Bhairoba, Malhari. So I remember there is a Maharashtrian cultural aspect called Gondhad or Jagar, and it's very popular music. It's a very high beat music.
I like it.
Is there any interesting finding from your reading about this Gondhad, and any references in the Gulamgiri book about this cultural aspect, which kind of almost forgotten, except it's only enjoyed as a music? Is there any historical finding in those cultural form?
So, Chatak, right? That's your name?
Chatak.
Chatak. Okay. Chatak. Oh, from that bird.
Yes.
Okay. So, Chatak, thank you for your question. When you talk about historical finding, now let me tell you, narratives, not all narratives are based on historical findings. Okay. Some narratives are just there for the sake of it. Okay. For example, one of the narrative I'll tell you, women cannot drive. They are really bad drivers. This is one narrative. So जरूरी नहीं कि हर narrative जो आप पढ़ो उसका ना कोई base हो, कोई solid base हो. That is why they are narratives. They are narration, right? उसका ना truth से हमेशा कोई ना कोई लेना देना होगा ही, इस बात की कोई guarantee नहीं हो. And that is why they are very powerful, because इस बात की कोई guarantee नहीं होती. And Mahatma Phule also says the same thing, right? क्योंकि आपने जो hierarchy create की है, इसका सच्चाई से कोई वास्ता ही नहीं है. That is what he is saying. Now, to answer your question about Gondhar, right? Mahatma Jyotirao Phule was an avid Marathi fan, Marathi language fan, right? That is why उनकी जो use है of Marathi language, it is superlative, right? And that is why he has seen all this culture, he has seen Marathi culture, he has seen these songs. That is why he comes to a conclusion कि जो मसोबा है ना, जो खंडोबा है ना, वो ना गाने में बहुत अच्छे होने चाहिए. That is why उनका जो वर्शिप किया जाता है ना, वो गोंधड़ करके गाने से किया जाता है. ठीक है? This is the inference that he draws, right? मल्हार पे जो राग मल्हार है, it is based on Malhari, right? That is a name given to Khandoba. वैसे ही if you go to जेजुरी में you will find all these rituals also that take place, जो महात्मा फुले eventually बाद में बात करते हैं उसकी. I would also like to give you one more example. There is this Maratha tradition of taking the challenge. So what happens is, if you are comfortable in Marathi, there is something called as Vida Utsalne. Okay, so there is a plate of betel leaf. Betel leaf, पता है आपको, पान जो खाया जाता है, तो वो पान ऐसे रखते हैं प्लेट में, और जिस इंसान को चैलेंज करना होता है किसी एस्टैब्लिश्ड अथॉरिटी को, किसी भी बड़े बात को चैलेंज करना होता है, तो विदा उचलने इज आई एम टेकिंग द इनिशिएटिव, आई एम टेकिंग द लीड, राइट? सो दिस वाज बेसिकली द ओरिजिन जो खंडोबा एंड मसोबा, ये जो सारे लीडर्स थे एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, वो ये करते थे, राइट? जब वो दूसरे यूनिट के लोगों को हराते थे ना, दूसरे लोगों के जो रेसलर्स थे उनको वो हराते थे, तो वो उस तरह की बीड़ा उचलने वाली वो रिचुअल वो करते थे, जो कि आप आज भी देख सकते हैं, राइट? गानों में जो आपने बोला था कि देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ गोंधर्स एंड सॉन्ग्स दैट हैव बीन यूज्ड, वो ना इसको प्रेज करते हैं, right? Maratha culture में, Maratha, even in the Peshwa culture if you see, so Jai Malhar, Jai Masoba, right? Jai Bhairava, right? ये बोलते क्यों है? क्योंकि इन ऑफिसर्स का आइडियल लिया जाता है, right? जो आपको गानों में भी दिखेगा, जिसका जिक्र इवन महात्मा फुले भी करते हैं, बट इसका जो हिस्टोरिकल ऑथेंटिसिटी है ना, ये डाउटफुल है. बिकॉज अगेन महात्मा फुले ना काउंटर नैरेटिव को क्लियर बनाते हैं टू डिफीट द नैरेटिव ऑफ डोमिनेंस. गेटिंग इट? तो महात्मा फुले का आइडिया क्या है कि ये लोग हैं जिनको पूजा जाता है, जो महाराष्ट्रियन कल्चर में ऑलरेडी आपको मिल रहा है. दैट इज एविडेंट इनफ. आई होप I am able to answer your question, Shatak.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I got it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shatak, for your question.
Thank you, Manasi. Actually, we have running out of time. So actually, you can share your email as well as your contact number, so participants can ask questions related to these sessions. So if you have any question, we can take a last questions, and then we can conclude the session.
Hello.
Hello, Anil.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was such a nice interpretation of Gulamgiri,
Thank
and
you,
in such
sir.
short time. I have only one query. See, the word Mahar has been explained by various people, including Robert Anderson, Iravati Karve, Mahatma Phule, Dr. Ambedkar, Maharishi Vittal Ramji Shinde, and many other scholars. Here, when Mahatma Phule talks about Mahariya, he is only giving lexical semantics,
Right.
rather than bibliographical references. Have you
Right.
come across any references which Mahatma Phule has given in Gulamgiri, either in Purana, Upanishad, Vedanta, or any other contemporary books prevailing in India, or it is only lexical semantics that he is talking about?
Okay, so that is a very good question, sir. Let's take all the questions so that I can answer, because we are running short of time. Yeah, just give me a minute to answer your question. Pankaj, do you also have a question?
No, I
Little.
don't have a question for you, Mansi. I just wanted to remind Nutan that we have one more speaker after this, Tenmuri Saundarya Rajan, and she's going to be talking about the very important bill that we have in California against caste-based discrimination called SB 403. And I just wanted to request Nutantai to please
So,
invite Tenmuri for this one after your call. So that is all I
okay,
wanted to say.
okay.
But thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much
much,
for the
Pankaj.
opportunity.
Thank you. So to answer Anil sir's question, since we are looking at a dissection of Gulamgiri, I have stuck to only the idea that Mahatma Phule shares. But Mahatma Phule talks from the use of apabhransha, right? From completely lexical terms, as you have already pointed out. There have been other theories that were prevailing at that point of time also, but they were not from the point of view of looking at the roots of where did Mahar come from, right? There were studies of caste system, there were studies of untouchability, but the use of words and looking at identities associated was basically pioneered by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. Okay, so I would like to really discuss this further with you because it's going to take a lot of time. So what we'll do is I'll share my email ID with you. I have already done it in the chat section. I would request you guys to please write to me so that I can answer your questions. Is that okay?
Okay, Mansi, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir. Thank you so much.
Because
Thank
I
you
have read
everyone
that
for
book
having
and I
me.
did not come across any references. Okay, thank you so much. We'll discuss separately.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Manasi Ahire. It was an excellent session. Okay, please connect if you have any query. She already shared her email ID, so you can directly email her and you can get answer of your query. So our next speaker is here. I would like to invite. Maybe if I pronounce wrong, so I'm extremely sorry for that. Just a moment.
Tenmuri Soundararajan.
Yes, I would like to invite Tenmoji Saundari Rajan. He is talking. He will be speak for few minutes about SP 403 bill. So yeah, your mic is your, please.
Sure. Thank you so much. And Jay Beam and Jay Savitri, everyone. It was really such a beautiful talk to kind of open up with Gulamgiri and be able to hear such wonderful insights. And really, the seeds of Gulamgiri are also in the campaign for SB 403 here in California. So for folks who may not be aware of, we have been working for over 7 to 8 months on this bill introduced by State Senator Aisha Wahab to end caste discrimination. And it's been an incredible journey. It's the first statewide campaign in the country. And I'm from the California Coalition for Caste Equity, as well as Equality Labs. And we have really done an incredible historical campaign to really educate and transform the state around caste discrimination. And I think that one of the things for people to kind of know about a campaign like this is that this is not a digital campaign. It's not something that you can just win by emails and calls. It was really a very, very ground level campaign because we have over 120 offices we have to influence in the legislature. That's because in California, our governmental house is made up of 40 senators and 80 assembly people. So at some point in your bill, you're going to have to be in each of those chambers of the House. So, over the last couple of months, the California Coalition for Caste Equity conducted over 700 advocacy meetings. We also did the first statewide caravan where we visited all of the district offices from San Diego County all the way to Shasta County. And we also, had multiple advocacy days where we came to the Capitol building and then met, one office right after the other to make our case around the bill. And the thing I think that is so significant is that this is the first time our community has, ever drafted, worked on a bill, understood what the process of government was like. And we had a very sympathetic office with Senator Aisha Wahhab's office. So we were lockstep with their office in terms of trying to figure out the best ways, that they could do work in their lane, and we could do work in our lane in terms of kind of flanking and supporting this bill throughout the journey. And it's been really an intensely, powerful process, particularly I think because the backbone of this movement is the Ravadasya community of California, which is one of the largest Ambedkarite communities in California. And because of that, we had members who were in every single county, alongside the Indian Muslim and the larger Muslim community, who also flanked this work alongside, labor unions and tech workers. So having all of those flanks towards our movement and our coalition really allowed us to have very diverse inputs into the conversation with the legislature. And where we are now is that the bill has now passed the House and the Senate, and it is sitting on the governor's desk. And our coalition is now in the middle of a hunger strike to basically remind, the state about the connection to reconciliation, the connection to healing, and to really focus on getting this bill through the governor's desk. So we have another week left to go, because next Friday, if the steps where we are really looking at is the governor can sign the bill, the governor can run out the clock. So next Friday, if he does nothing, the bill becomes law and we're done. Or he can veto the bill. So our journey right now is just to put as much positive energy, much notes for healing and connection, so that he knows that it's a positive thing to add this bill and to support this bill. And so we'll be moving in that direction for the next week. So it's a very, very complicated, intense campaign. And I think anyone here that is interested in running a similar campaign in their own states, just know that it's a pretty extensive time commitment. So we started in February, and since then, our organizers in terms of the California Coalition for Caste Equity easily took off 1 to 3 days a week, depending on the cycle of what was going on in a campaign, plus had lots of night meetings and weekend meetings, but it was worth it. We got to meet so many organizers across the state. We made an impact in terms of the Democratic Party, who really now understands this issue and has seen our base show up so strongly to multiple events. But also it's like an indicator of the fact that, for us, and I think thinking back to, the earlier speaker who was talking about some of the lessons of Gulamgiri, it is not enough for us to read books and have conferences. The other mandate we have from Phule to Ambedkar is to take the rings of power. And we have to, go to the highest level we can, wherever we might be. So it might start with joining an interfaith table, or maybe it's about going to a human rights commission, or maybe it's about running for city council, or next, the state assembly, or the state senator, or even becoming, a formal congressional legislator. The bottom line is that when we are here in the United States, we have to start to be involved in communities broader than ourselves and make connections with other oppressed peoples. Because the key to California was all of our solidarity relationships. In the California Coalition, we have close to 200 to 300 organizations that wrote in in behalf of the campaign, and also, you know, people that just made calls, people that, you know, normally would never weigh in on the issue of caste, but were willing to do so. And you know, again, the flanks of our movement included major labor unions, they included tech workers, they included people from multiple religious backgrounds. So we had a very strong interfaith presence. And we also created a legal task force, you know, led by Tanuja Gupta, who drove the process of that independent task force, and, you know, brought in legal associations from across the country and lawyers across the state, which really helped in terms of clarifying some of the disinformation about the unlawfulness, or, you know, whatever disinformation was happening. It just confirmed over and over again that adding caste was lawful and necessary. And one of the biggest wins we had was getting the American Bar Association to come out strongly in favor of caste equity, as well as the South Asian Bar Association and the National Asian American Pacific Bar Association. Just those associations represent tens of thousands of lawyers who weighed in on behalf of the issue of caste equity. So a lot of the wins that we've done in California can inform other people and other campaigns. But this next week is very crucial. So I'm sure that, you know, folks in Anna will be sharing some of the asks, but it could be a call, it could be an email, it could be another portal. If you get those asks, please take that 5 to 10 minutes to do it, because it really matters, because our opponents are basically sending emails and calls every day. So if we lose focus in this last week, all of this work of organizing that we've done in the last year, in the last couple of months, will be, you know, could be turned over simply because we didn't show up on that last cycle. And luckily people have been so consistent. And so I just, you know, so I'm really, really grateful for everyone that took like a small part in that work, because it really matters for those of us on the ground, because we're really in the middle of it, you know, and having to face, you know, a lot of violence to get this bill passed. But if we do it, we win it, not just for California, but for all of us. So I'll just stop right here and see if there's any questions.
Thank you.
Tenmuri, can you also talk about when is the date where the governor has to sign? What is the last date for the governor to sign?
It would be this Friday.
This Friday. Okay, great.
That's why the next week's actions are really crucial. And I really want to thank, you know, Smita and Sandeep from ANA, who have been like the representatives in the California Coalition for Caste Equity, because they have been so consistently pushing and driving support. And we really do need it. It's not going to stop. Like, this week is going to be really critical. And once we win, we will also have to defend the win, because, you know, I'm sure that like once we win, the opponents will drop their lawsuit against the state for adding caste as a protected category, which is absurd, but they will do it just because they don't know how to participate in democratic processes. And they are really unable to bring evidence or even legal practitioners who want to support them in this issue. And so they have to, you know, resort to undemocratic processes. But that's why, you know, Dr. Ambedkar always told us to stay with the law. As long as we have law and the self-respect, we will ultimately prevail.
Yeah, Pankaj Mishra, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Tenmuri. I really appreciate the work that has been put forward by your leadership team, everybody who helped out here. One thing that I wanted to kind of make an appeal to all ANA members is this. This is your time to shine, or this is your time to show something that you are an Ambedkarite who's going to make Baba Saheb proud or Mahatma Phule proud. This is how we need to do it. We need to have caste as a protected category added by law. And this is the process that has been kind of worked on. And we need to show up to make sure it gets signed as a law. So if it takes your 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you are not in California, send an email. They don't need to know where you are coming from, where the email is coming from. All I'm trying to say is this is the time you need to stand up and show that support and do it for not only for California. Once California has it, it becomes very easy, if not very easy, at least easier to carry it forward to the next steps where we would be looking at nationwide. But please take that time. Anna is sending those emails. We changed our um, group settings only to for the admins to send messages, because we don't wanted these messages to get buried into other messages that we have talks on our groups. So please, this next week is very, very important. Wherever you are from, it doesn't matter. You please send out an email, ask the governor that you support this bill and you want him to sign it. And your message and support now is extremely needed. Please take this very, very seriously. We don't want it just the campaigners to work on it. We need to show up there. We need to stand up. And we being from away from it, if this is how we do it, then that is what we do it. And they're asking us, they're giving us the text messages to send. They are giving us the phone numbers to call to. They are giving us the actual phone email messages where we need to send. You may have to just cut and paste and send it out and say, like, I support this. I want the governor to sign it. Please do take that time, do it daily. Just don't do it once. This is kind of very, very important. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that for everybody, as to that you see that this is not a California bill. This is I'm not in California, so why worry or anything like that. This is a bill for us. This is going to create a foundation for us in United States. Once US follows that, other countries will take it up. We tried that it at a United Nations level in 2001 in South Africa, the World Conference Against Racism. And at that forum, this is a countries forum, India refused to be part of that. So no other countries can sign that bill. So caste is not a protected category all across now. Had that bill been passed in 2001, maybe these things weren't needed. But now we need to do this, and we can't be a failure at this level now. They have put in so much efforts to take it to pass through Senate, pass it through Congress at California now, and it is sitting at the governor's desk. We need to push him to sign it. So, and again, I wanted to thank for all the hard work done by the campaign. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Pankaj. And I think just to echo that, it's also a big lesson, I think, for everyone is that in your city and state, you have to get involved. It is really, really important that other people know that there are Ambedkarites that are there. You are doing work. And I know that, Anna had an equity week and month campaign. We need to keep building that forward, because the thing is that if we choose to stay quiet, we are invisible in the halls of power, and we cannot afford that anymore. So begin making those relationships and doing that work. And again, this week there'll be emails, there'll be calls, and every day each individual here can do 3 posts tagging the governor, sharing information with the hashtag sign SB 403. The more people that he sees around the country, around the world, posting on this issue, the more that he knows that he cannot say no to freedom. And we are here to break the shackles of caste together, and to be human, and to pursue our human dignity. And there's nothing more powerful than that. So I actually have to run, everybody, but I thank you, Anna, not only for the space today, but also for the leadership and the support that different members, especially, Smita and Sandeep have had in terms of supporting the campaign overall. We could not have done it without you guys, and we want to, hopefully, you guys will also be pursuing many, many different processes in different institutions and just jurisdictions as well, because this is all of our movement. This is our time to be humanized, and looking forward to celebrating with everybody, fingers crossed. But I think that no matter what happens with the ultimate outcome of this bill, we have already won. We have made millions of people talk about caste. We have informed every single legislator. They now know more than they ever wanted to know about caste. And that's the power of Ambedkarite leadership and vision, and a movement that's rooted in love and healing. So I just want to thank everybody. And, you know, I have to run, but thank you and much love, and Jai Bhim and Jai Savitri, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, before that, let us come together and support for this bill. And yeah, here we are concluding today's session. Today we started this session with the Tisarana, and then Vandana, and then Panchashila. After that, Bhante talk about Farusa Vacha. After that, the kid story. It was wonderful story. After that, Manasi Ahire talk about the Gulamgiris, the questioning narratives by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, and it is a critical dissection of the Gulamgiri. And after that, we heard talk by Tino Moji's Soundara Rajan. Sorry for mispronunciation. And then thank you for participation. You patiently hear all the today's wonderful important talks. So let us come together for the next sessions, and thank you for your support, and thank you very much. So today here I conclude the session.